He sat across from the most powerful man in Rome. Everyone in that room was talking, arguing, defending themselves, competing to be heard. He said nothing, not out of fear, not out of weakness. He simply watched, still, unreadable, like a mountain deciding whether the river even deserved an answer. 3 days later, the emperor appointed him chief advisor over every man who had spoken that day. His name was Epictetus, and the secret he carried, the one that made silent people terrifyingly powerful, is exactly what I'm about to show you. Welcome back. If you're new here, this channel explores the ancient wisdom of Stoicism and how it applies to your life right now, today. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly why the quietest person in the room is almost always the most dangerous in the best possible way. You'll learn the Stoic discipline of silence that Marcus Aurelius practiced every single morning. You'll understand why most people's words are actually leaking their power. And you'll discover what silent people see that nobody else does. By the end of this, you'll never look at a quiet person the same way again. Before we go further, comment below right now. Do you consider yourself a quiet person or someone who tends to fill silence? There's no wrong answer. I'm genuinely curious. Here's a scenario most of us know too well. You walk into a meeting. You have a good idea, maybe a great one, and the moment there's a pause, you start talking, you explain it, you over-explain it, you add qualifiers, you hedge, you watch people's faces for approval. By the time you're done, the idea has somehow gotten smaller. Meanwhile, one person in the corner, the one who barely spoke, waits until you're finished, then says 4 words, and the whole room turns toward them. Why does this happen? In ancient Rome, a senator named Cato the Younger became one of the most feared men in politics, not because of his sword, not because of his wealth, but because of what he refused to say. He would sit in the Senate for hours without speaking. And when he finally did, every ear in the room snapped toward him like a compass finding north. The Stoics understood something about speech that modern culture has completely forgotten. Every word you speak is a withdrawal from a finite account of credibility. The less you withdraw, the richer you remain. Most people today are bankrupt, not financially, verbally. They spend words the way a gambler spends chips, fast, desperately, without a strategy. And here's what it's costing them: trust, influence, and something even more precious, clarity of their own mind. But there's a reason silent people seem to always be 10 steps ahead, and it's not what you think. Wait. Before I continue, I need you to hear this. Research from Harvard Business School found that people who speak less in group settings are consistently rated as more competent, more trustworthy, and more leadership-ready, even when they said nothing of substance. Let that land for a moment. Marcus Aurelius kept a journal. You've probably heard of it. It's called Meditations. What most people don't realize is that he wrote it entirely for himself. He never intended it to be published. It was private, guarded, a man thinking in secret. That wasn't an accident. That was a Stoic practice. Epictetus, the slave-turned-philosopher whose ideas shaped Marcus Aurelius, taught that there are 2 domains in life: what you control and what you don't. Your words are something you control completely. Which means every unnecessary word is a choice to surrender power you didn't have to surrender. Epictetus called it the guarded mouth. He would tell students, before you speak, ask yourself 3 questions. Is it true? Is it necessary? Does it improve on the silence? If it fails any one of those 3 tests, say nothing. Now think about your last week. How many things did you say that failed all 3 tests? Here's what the guarded mouth actually does in practice. When you stop talking to fill space, you start noticing things other people miss. The micro-expressions, the hesitation before someone answers, the way the room shifts when a certain name comes up. Silent people aren't ahead because they're smarter. They're ahead because they're watching while everyone else is performing, and there is no performance more exhausting or more revealing than the person who cannot sit with silence. That discomfort you feel when nobody's talking, the Stoics saw it as an invitation, a doorway. They trained to walk through it. Think about the quietest person you've ever known. Wise, mysterious, intimidating. Tell me in the comments 1 word to describe them. I read every single one, and if this is resonating with you, hit the like button right now. It genuinely helps this reach more people who need it. Earlier, I mentioned that Cato sat in the Roman Senate for hours without speaking. But I didn't tell you what he was doing while everyone else talked. He was building a map. Every speech, every argument, every slip of the tongue, Cato filed it away. He knew who was afraid of whom. He knew who lied under pressure. He knew before anyone else which alliances were about to crack. He never needed to spy on anyone. People handed him the information freely because they forgot he was listening. This is the second power of silence. It turns you invisible to other people's filters. When someone is talking a lot, people are analyzing them, consciously and unconsciously. When you're quiet, that analytical process never starts. People treat you as furniture. And furniture sees everything. The Stoic Emperor Hadrian, who ruled Rome at its absolute peak, was famous for entering a new city and saying almost nothing for the first 3 days. His advisors would report back to Rome. He seems unimpressed, but what he was actually doing was auditing, reading the city the way you'd read a balance sheet. By day 4, he knew which officials to trust, which to watch, and which to remove before he'd ever attended a single meeting. "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth," Epictetus said, "so that we may listen twice as much as we speak." That's not a metaphor. It was a daily practice. Here is the counterintuitive truth that changes everything. The person who talks the most in any room controls the least, because talking is broadcasting, and broadcasting means you cannot receive. Silence is a receiver. It pulls in signal that noise cannot detect. And now here is the deepest layer, the one most people never reach. Now here's the part most people get completely wrong about silence. And honestly, it took me years to understand this myself. Remember the man at the beginning of this video, the one who sat across from the most powerful man in Rome and said nothing? Let me finish that story, because it's not what you think. Epictetus wasn't silent because he was strategic. He wasn't performing discipline. He was silent because he had done something most people never do. He had made peace with his own mind. And here is the final, most important truth this video has been building toward. Silent people aren't 10 steps ahead because they talk less. They're 10 steps ahead because they think more, and they have stopped using other people's noise to avoid their own thoughts. Most talking, most human speech, is not communication. It's escape. We talk to avoid thinking. We speak to avoid feeling. We fill silence because sitting inside our own mind for 30 seconds terrifies us. There's something in there we haven't dealt with. The Stoics called this inner work prosoche, vigilant self-attention. Every day, Marcus Aurelius would sit before the demands of ruling an empire and ask himself, what have I not examined today? What thought have I been avoiding? What truth am I running from? The silent person in the room has done this work. That's what the stillness actually is. It isn't emptiness. It's a mind that has been cleaned out, organized, and prepared. When everyone else reacts, the silent person responds. When everyone else panics, the silent person has already seen 3 versions of this situation before, inside their own mind, in quiet, while the world wasn't watching. This is why they seem so impossibly ahead. It was never about saying less. It was always about thinking more, and that practice, that deliberate, courageous inner silence is available to every single person watching this right now, starting today. Let me bring this home with 3 things I want you to remember. 1. Every unnecessary word is a withdrawal from your credibility. The Stoics guarded their speech the way a general guards his supply lines. 2. Silence is not the absence of power, it is a receiver, pulling in signal that noise will never detect. 3. The person 10 steps ahead isn't quieter because they know more because they chose to be quieter. Here is your challenge for this week. Find one moment each day, just one, where you would normally speak, and instead choose to listen fully. Without preparing your reply, just receive. Notice what you learn, notice what you feel, and notice how the room begins to feel your presence differently. It is not what happens to you, but how you respond to it that matters. Epictetus said that, and he said it quietly. If this video made you think differently about silence, about your own mind, please hit the like button right now. It takes 2 seconds and it genuinely helps this content reach people who need it. Subscribe if you haven't already. I post a new Stoicism video every week, and next week's video on why the Stoics believed most people live their entire lives on autopilot and how to break free is going to be one of the most important things I've ever made. Tell me in the comments, which point hit you the hardest? The guarded mouth, the power of listening, or the idea that most talking is actually escape? I read every comment. I'll see you in the next one.